Hello, everybody, and welcome to That NextGen Planners Podcast. You are joining us today, not just me, Amelia Hamilton, Head of Community, but with two wonderful co-hosts and another excellent guest. My co-host, of course, being the brilliant Taylor Beavis.
Hello.
And the excellent Clara. I keep on saying Clara. I have to keep picking myself up. Clara. I think most people seem to get your name wrong as well.
Oh, it's a lifelong struggle.
Yeah. Nightmare. Clara Metcalf. So hopefully from now on, that's what it's going to be across the board. But anyway, enough about us, our co-host, because we are joined today by a man you might recognise. I think you probably will. It is Dan Graham, Chief Designer at docVinci and Head of Marketing at, you guessed it, NextGen Planners. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Nice to be here. And there was no confusion over my name, was there? Because you can't really get that wrong.
Dan Graham.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Pretty average name.
White man, English,
British
name. You can even switch it around. It still makes sense.
Yeah, I know. It's still, Graham Daniel. That is, I think, actually is a bloke that I used to know. So he probably does exist.
Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of them. Yeah.
Might be a footballer, actually.
Graham Daniels.
Yeah.
Daniel, maybe.
Oh,
maybe.
Yeah.
Rings a bell, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that name before.
Anyway. So yeah, I mean, it must be kind of weird for you because when the NextGen Planners podcast first started, you were the host of it. So
yeah, I mean, it wasn't actually even me. It was Adam Carolan who did. I think him and Rohan took the first 80 episodes or something, and then I carried it for about 120 episodes, and then you guys have taken. You took over for a little while, and then now obviously the new format is here. We've changed the to that.
Yes.
Obviously, it's a massive change, isn't it? So
huge, monumental. I don't think people are going to be able to keep up, but we keep moving. We keep moving.
Well, it's good. I mean, it's much better with you guys, anyways, than it has been.
So, sweet.
Yeah, I'm sure our audience are very, very delighted to see me moving out of the way.
Flattery will get you everywhere, Dan Graham. So yes, keep that up for the rest of the podcast, I think. But we're not here to just shoot the breeze, catch up, natter. We are going to talk about creating a world-class client experience, about marketing, about branding, all of that good stuff. And this is where pretty much all of your attention, time, energy is focused nowadays, looking at what financial planners can do to improve that. Starting really kind of macro, really broad, what is a good client experience? What do you think that looks like from your side of things as a designer? What are some of the hallmarks of what makes a good client journey?
Yeah, here's a massive question to start with. Jeez. So I was thinking about this morning, actually, when we were looking at this, and I was just thinking that, first of all, the most important thing in a client experience is the clients, obviously. So ultimately, I think sometimes we actually are scared to ask clients what they might want or what they would see as a good client experience, and I think we kind of see surveys and research and stuff like that as a little bit icky, but I think the best client experiences always start there. It's what does the client want? And there's a firm that I'm working with actually in London at the moment, and they're launching a new proposition, working with women, and they're doing a massive amount of work on, okay, well, what do these guys actually want to see? So it's been really interesting because they're doing things like focus groups and qualitative interviews and all that kind of stuff to actually figure out what they want to see from their experience with a financial planner. So that part is, I think, where we should always start. It's really knowing who the client is, because you can't say a good client experience is going to be the same for every client. So I would imagine, Taylor, it's probably going to be a little bit different from what your clients would want to see than your clients, Clara, because again, they'll probably want to see different things because they might have very similar traits between themselves, but the way you work is different from the way you work. And therefore, they would expect to see different things and experiences and stuff. But ultimately, I think it all comes down to the word I always use in like webinars and stuff when it comes down to this stuff is friction. So friction is anything that stops your clients from working with you or making big decisions or doing something or whatever it might be. If it's a new prospect coming along, friction can be, your website taking too long to load or something like that. It's anything that is getting in the way of. Sorry, I don't know if that came through. Punching but anything that's getting in the way of them working with you. So a good client experience, ultimately, if we can think about it today, is literally just the one with the least amount of friction, the one with the least amount of things that get in the way that might, increase what we call cognitive dissonance with clients, so making them think that they've got the wrong decision or something like that. anything that you can do to reduce the amount of friction will automatically, it's literally like a graph. Friction goes down, client's experience goes up. And it's the case with every single thing that you have.
Is there anything else so we talked about client experience, but what else does that give the business owner as well? So what other benefits come off the back of having a good client experience?
That's a great question, because this is something that we always talk about, and people talk about referrals and how to get more referrals and all that kind of stuff. And there's always loads of research done, especially in the US, about like how do you get more referrals from clients. And there was a survey done of clients, which is why don't you refer your advisor on to other people that you're like your friends or family. And a lot of the time, it's actually got nothing to do with like, or it was actually asking why do you refer your advisor to your friends and family, and it's nothing to do with that they asked me or like that they've got it in their email address or email signature or anything like that. It is literally just that their client experience was better than I've ever experienced. So. The really simple one benefit to having a really great client experience is that you literally just get more referrals. Also, well, it's not guaranteed to get you more referrals, but it's certainly one way to definitely start. But also, sticky clients as well. How many, we know that we don't really have a problem with clients leaving us in financial planning. Usually I would imagine
they do, yeah. They stick around, and
you maybe lose one like every now and again. And when it does happen, it's either because of, unfortunately, they've passed away or something else. Anyways, it's very rarely because you offer a bad client experience. But that's because financial planning is very, very good at doing client experience. So that's another benefit, is it creates that very, very, very sticky client, and they would never go anywhere else because you guys know every single thing. Maybe not every single thing, but so much about your clients. And again, that is part of the client's experience, is them feeling that they can trust you and that they know who you are and that they know that you've got their best interests at heart as well.
And it must feel good as a business owner to, if you've got this lovely experience, to know that you're providing that experience. That's a feel good for you too.
Oh God, yeah. And at a personal level as well, if you can look at that, because this is actually something that we say when we work with people. Ultimately, it's a bit of a sales technique for me, but it's almost like when you look back in 12 months' time and after we've worked on whatever it is that we're working on, making new documents and all that kind of stuff, making everything look better and feel better and flow better, is you'll look back and you'll think that looks nothing like it did 12 months ago. And you're then proud of it. And we'll talk about branding today as well, but we always say, don't we, that the most important person to love your brand ultimately is you. And your client experience is you, because you're the one who's going to have to talk about it every day. You're the one who's going to have to shout about your business every day and shout about what you're doing every day. And so therefore the most important person that helps is actually a lot of the time it's you, because you're so proud of it and you can go out there and get it.
Having confidence in your own process makes it so much easier to organically talk about and sell to people. And I just want to come back to that point you made about clients. You're more likely to talk about outstanding service than you are everyday average service. You're never going to tell anybody about the bus driver you met in the morning, but if you made a funny joke or something like that, you might talk about that. So when somebody goes above and beyond and has something that's really, something special, that's going to get people talking. Yeah,
definitely. And, again, it's very, very rare that you see any, when we look on Google, it's very rare that you'll see any advisors with bad reviews or anything like that. It's actually very rare that even happens. It is usually, like you said, first of all, as well, there's a difference between not asking for referrals and stuff like that and asking for things like Google reviews and stuff like that. I do actually think you need to ask for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, with things like vouch for and all those kind of things, they're demonstrating that you've had a brilliant client experience, and that's why a lot of the firms that we work with have like over 150 like reviews on vouch for, because their clients are dying to tell everybody else how amazing they are and how well the experience has been.
And so, Dan, a question a bit out there with this one. So
I don't like your face when you're asking this. It looks like you're
sorry. So if you had every financial planning firm in this room now, and you could press a button and change something about their marketing or their proposition, the same, just one thing you could change, what would you change for everybody?
God, that is a really, really good question.
Sorry.
No, it's good. It comes down to friction again. But it's the communication part. I would say I don't think you guys have a problem with communication, because I would imagine you talk to your clients like pretty much all the time, especially when they're onboarding with you. It's a pretty like full-on intense part, isn't it? But I think what financial planners and actually our profession as a whole could do better is just communicating the complex things a lot more simpler. So a lot of people will still, and this comes into, you know, why we do all the documents and everything like that, but it's the technicalities of the products and all those kind of things. That kind of stuff doesn't need to be front and center for clients. You know, this is what we see a lot of the time with suitability reports and stuff like that. You don't need to, yes, you need to show your client the suitability report and go through it with them and all that kind of stuff, but you don't actually need to present every single thing and throw every single thing at the client. It's your job, and I think everybody knows this, but it's difficult to get right. It's your job to condense all that information in something that actually makes sense for those. So I think what I would do, it's a really big question because I've got loads flying into my mind. I mean, even things like websites and stuff.
Yeah, you're only allowed one thing.
Let me get onto that. But yeah, it would definitely be that. It would be keeping at the front of your mind all the time that my job here is not to act like the smartest person or not to show clients things that I think will make me look clever or whatever, or think that regulation is asking me to send.
Yeah.
It's what actually does the client want to see and what will make sense to them as well.
And I guess that goes straight back into what is important in the actual financial planning process, and it's the client. What does the client want? You're here to ask questions to make sure that you're getting to the heart of what it is they need, and it's making sure that they're in a position where they feel comfortable enough to tell you, and you can figure that out together. And so it seems like it's just kind of hand in hand. It bleeds into that.
Well, they
kind
pay
of
the bills.
Things. Yeah.
I mean, you know, I hate to sound like one of those horrible CEOs and what kind of. I mean, who is it that has like a space at the table? There's some CEO in some company who has like a space at the board meeting table, and it's the client's seat or something like that.
Really?
Yeah, that to me is a little bit wanky, but never mind. But it's true though. Like they do pay the bills. They're the ones who, maybe without your clients. Super duper simple thing to say, but without your clients, you wouldn't have a business.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes I think we do get a bit lost with those kind of things and thinking maybe not what we want, but what are other people doing, or what are the firms that I really love doing. And actually you forget that, you know, other firms don't pay your bills. Your clients pay your bills. So it's most important about what they want, not what other firms are doing.
And it was really nice you talking about friction. I mean, I hadn't thought of it in that way, but actually for us here in the UK, we really don't like talking about money generally. No. And so if you're removing the friction from that onboarding process, that is already a process that's quite long and there's lots to go through. I guess it then helps with opening up clients and them sharing more easily the information that we need, which translates to everything else. So being able to onboard clients easier and really nice. I like it.
There's a thing that we were talking about in a webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago, which is the IKEA effect as well. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this before. You might, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I come back to it all the time because it's awesome. It's not a behavioural bias as such, but it's something cognitive that means when we build something ourselves, we tend to care about it more. So it's called the IKEA effect because it's flat pack furniture. So when you build a chest of drawers, you maybe you don't even know it, maybe it's subconscious, but you have this kind of, you care about that chest of drawers more than if some bloke called Brian came in and built them for you because you built them, you put all that time in. And it's the same thing with the analogy with financial planning is if you can get your clients involved with actually building, and you mentioned before the process and that kind of stuff, clients actually love being involved. Well, from what I've seen, they love being involved in the processes of the best financial planning businesses. So like things, for example, like building their own cash flow and that kind of stuff. When we used to build cash flow plans live with clients, you could literally see their eyes like, well, like, can we do this? Can we create another one that would show if we went here or something like that?
I love those kind of
They're amazing. I mean, they cannot be replaced. Like you cannot replace those kind of conversations. And to me, that's what proper financial planning is. It's where you get the clients involved, you get them in there, and the IKEA effect is strongest there because they care about it. They're going to do things more because you've involved them in it. It's not just you saying, I think this is the best decision for you. It's you think this is the best decision for you because you've just shown me that you want to do it.
Yeah, and they're just invested in the plan themselves because I heard Brendan Fraser talking about this a couple of years ago, and it was that when you put the human at the centre of the solution and they've come up with themselves, you've armed them with all of the information, you've helped them with the education, you've not used the big technical words, you've put it in simple formats. They get that buy-in, they get excited, they really want to see that plan succeed, and because you've enabled them to do that rather than told them what to do, they have a much higher chance of success because they've done it themselves. If you go and tell somebody what to do, they're not necessarily going to act on it. And so it's always better. I mean, I think something really powerful that I heard was it's always better to build a plan that's maybe, 60% successful, but it actually gets actioned, rather than giving them something that's 100% successful, but they haven't bought into it, and therefore none of it gets actioned. And actually that's an important part of our role, is to help them get some progress. And you get that through getting that buy-in.
Yeah, and done is better than perfect. That's something that a lot of people always say is, like literally what you just said there, done is always better than perfect, because something perfect but not being done doesn't exist. It's just nothing.
Yeah. So. Yeah, for sure. I mean, all makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, when we put it like that?
Sounds really simple. It's tough to get right.
Absolutely. I can imagine, and there's the opposite side to friction as well, of trying to make things easier. There's I was talking to who is it? Moira Summers, who said there's nudge and sludge, and sludge, so it's the sludge that is the friction, and then the nudge is just make it a little bit easier, just signpost a little bit more, just make it very clear this is what you do. And if you can get the right balance of mitigating the sludge and enhancing the nudge, then you've got this seamless kind of transition that really helps client engagement. What I want to move things onto now, though, is looking at branding and looking at what role that plays in this kind of wider context, and what people are doing not so well. What do you think people are doing very well, and what's the impact when branding is done right?
Yeah, so I don't think that what I'm going to say is anything revolutionary, because we've been talking about it for years. But I think we all know, don't we, that financial planning has a bit of a brand problem. And when I say that, I don't mean that like, all the brands in financial planning are necessarily shit. But I mean that, first of all, if you went out into the street and asked somebody what do they think of financial advisors or something like that, I can't imagine that it would be...
I hate telling people what I do.
Yeah. And that's something like...
Judgment.
When I used to go to networking, events and stuff like that when I was starting out, I used to almost say, well, I'm just a financial advisor, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. I mean, that's so... As soon as you start talking, you're already on the back foot, because you feel this thing of like, oh, well, they won't care, or they won't know what it is, or what the reputation of our profession is bad, as we all know.
It's the trust, isn't it? The trust was broken, and we're very slowly trying to rebuild that. Exactly.
And if you went out there and said to somebody, what do you think of financial planners? They'd probably go, I don't know what one of those is. Yep. Ultimately, they don't know. There's a real problem with, first of all, lack of trust, and also lack of knowledge of actually what it is that you guys and what people in our community actually do. So I think the brand problem is there. But I think one of the things that would really help is, you guys were chatting to like Sean and Vicky from Lightside Financial Planning on a previous episode, and it might be a previous episode.
It could be upcoming. Who knows? Don't ruin the magic of the television of podcasting. No, we're doing it live. It's coming out in real time.
That's one thing I am bad at, is continuity. So, but those guys, for example, they literally said, didn't they? They were like, we wanted to look different to everybody else. We wanted to feel different to anybody else. So they actually did a survey. I think they said it in a room where they got, I think was it exactly 50% of people liked it and 50% of people didn't like it. But the most important thing was that the people they were trying to work with did like it. And that is crucially important. And it's never, it's always been easy. But right now, it has actually never been easier to stand out in financial planning, I don't think, because first of all, you've got the tools and the things now. Like, you can literally go onto Google and just put in to create me a brand. And AI will do it for you now for 65 quid or something like that. And you can have a new, fresh, brand new brand that is, I love saying that, brand new brand, that is, like nothing else. But I think that was what, if I was to tell somebody, and we have got lots of people who are starting new financial planning brands, that there is this always kind of temptation for them to just call it something which is really simple, or make it look like other financial planning businesses. And what that does is it doesn't differentiate you at all from what everybody else is doing. One of the things, one of the main colours in financial planning, for example, is navy. And, all financial planning brands, and that looks good, right? Because yours is green, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
green.
And I can remember Taylor seeing your brand for the first time. I was like, whoa, this looks completely different to what. And the name, for example, Universe, it's different to what other people do. Ovation's different to what other people do, and that lovely orange and all that kind of, literally like it's all Ovation branded behind us, isn't it? And with a lot of the firms we work with when we're helping them create brands and stuff like that, the main thing is, will this look different to other financial planning businesses? Because that's what your brand is. It's the gap between what everybody else isn't doing. And it needs to obviously link to who you want to work with. So if you want something that is going to be a bit more corporate or something like that, you obviously need to still make it look like something they want. But that doesn't mean it needs to look like every single thing, everybody else that's also doing that thing as well.
Last name and last name wealth management.
And I don't mind those things sometimes. and that's absolutely, this is the thing. It's you're the person who needs to love your brand the most. But you're exactly right, because that's the thing that we see the most common. Whereas if I was to start a financial planning brand tomorrow, we would talk about this on the train.
We were,
last
coming
night,
up with all the different
cool
names,
different names and all that kind of. There's some brilliant names out there, but they always focus on either the transformation. So shout out here to one of my favourite financial planning brands, which is One Day Wealth, which is Christy and Martha. Brilliant name for a business. One day you will be able to do this or something like that.
Nice.
Transformational, really cool name. His brand is gorgeous. His brand stands out as well. And that's kind of what we're trying to get to is rather than thinking, what do you actually do? It's where do you help people get to, which is literally what One Day.
Yeah, it's a good message all in one, isn't it, really?
And One Day, well, it kind of sounds a bit like a Spanish term or something.
One day.
Or Hyundai. So that's good. I also love Joe Froud. He's in the NextGen community. His is called Best Life Financial Planning, helping you live your best life. So simple, so cool. There's some brilliant names out there. But
Spend Well, that's a good one.
Spend Well, brilliant name. And of course, Keith's. I don't know if you guys have seen Keith's. Keith's brand. Wasn't Scared. Pink.
Yeah.
No other financial plan. He launched Spend Well around the same time that docVinci was launched as well, and we actually both kind of went with this bright pink thing because it was like there's nobody else who's doing that.
Oh, magenta.
Strong
actually, paint game.
I think Gretchen would tell us off actually, because I don't actually think they would call that pink.
Oh, they call it magenta, isn't
magenta.
it? Yeah.
Is magenta not
Got to
pink?
get my Pantone correct.
I mean,
sorry
Gretchen, but I would say it is pink. But
it's very different pink. It's very, very different pink.
It's
very different.
It's
special pink.
It's a special pink. They've got their own pink.
They've got their own. And Dan, so in terms of branding, so you've got branding of the company and you've got personal branding. So in your mind, are they equally as important, or would you say the personal brand of the advisor is more important than the firm?
You know what? I still haven't got the answer to this question, because I keep on, almost every week I go through different kind of opinions on this, because I'm always like, well, I see somebody doing fantastic work on their own personal brand, and that gets them loads. It all depends what you're looking to do. So I've seen people, effectively not even have a business brand, but their own personal brand, and they've absolutely smashed it, and they've got, they've grown massively. Yeah. On the other side, I've seen people who've really focused on just having a business brand and making it really kind of, that is your brand as well. And they've done really well as well. I think the personal brand side of things is where you're more likely to become a thought leader if you do. So thought leadership is this big thing in marketing. I think everybody will probably understand what that means. It's that you are the go-to person for something. So my aim, for example, is to be the go-to person when somebody thinks of creating cool documents in financial planning.
DaVinci,
exactly. And that's why I will never talk about anything else, because I'm just always doing that. And docVinci, for example, doesn't have a LinkedIn social media page. It doesn't have anything. It has a website, but it doesn't have anything else other than that, because I purely focus on just me putting it out there and growing it. And that's going all right. I mean, it's going, fine. But that's why thought leadership can work a lot better hand in hand with personal brand than it can with business brand. But the business brand is also important for things like trust and for making sure that you're actually a business, of course, as well. Which goes against literally what I've just said there, because docVinci doesn't even have one. But for those kind of things, I do think as you get more established, you then probably should start to bring in more things relating to the business brand. But it's a great question.
Like you say, it's credit for the firm, it's credibility. But if people were referring someone to you, then it would be, oh, you need to speak to Dan. Oh, he set up. So the firm comes second a lot of the time. Same with financial advisors. I often get, oh, you need to speak to Taylor. Oh, what company does he work? And it's like the person is more important sometimes.
Well, they're the person. I mean, for you especially because it's you and
just me and one other, but not an advisor.
Yeah. And so that's fine, because when they say go and speak to Taylor, they literally mean, yes, of course, you, but they mean the business as well. Obviously for you guys that's a little bit different because Avation's a lot bigger than that.
Because we have the connections with the Financial Wellbeing podcast as well. And I literally had a client call up the other day and say, I want to talk to Ovation because I love the podcast. I really love the stuff you guys talk about. And, that's awesome. I love listening to Tom and Chris. And it's like, oh, great. And I was thinking, so they've come for Tom, but they're getting me. At least they know, that the company is built on the same values. So in some ways, the Ovation brand in that way has supported. He'll get to know me separately, but the individual's reputation is also as important as the company in some ways for the two to work together.
Yeah, 100%. And when we talk about brand, I think we all often think of like colours and logos and fonts and all that kind of. It's always like a visual thing, whereas brand actually goes a lot deeper. It's who you are, it's your values, it's what you actually talk about, it's your personality and all those kind of things. It's what gap you fill. And I think that's why sometimes when we talk about this, we get a little bit confused, because you think, well, does a personal brand mean that I have to have like a signature or something like that? And it's like, you don't even have to have a logo to have a personal brand. It can, like Tom, for example, on the Financial Wellbeing podcast, he doesn't have a logo for himself.
Tight ass Tomo.
But that's not
his brand.
But it's not a logo or anything like that. It's not colours or anything like that. It's just him and what he does and the jokes he makes and the things he does and all that kind of stuff. And that's a strong brand. And you've literally just pointed out that will make people get in touch with them as well. So,
yeah.
And I think that's a pretty good place to give people a little bit of a break. They can ponder what side of the fence they fall on.
Good shout.
And we'll all be back with lots more conversation with Dan in a second. Hello, this is your interval for That NextGen Planners Podcast. I hope you are enjoying the conversation we are having at the moment. If you do want to find out any more information about our brilliant community, you can head over to www.nextgenplanners.co.uk to find out loads more information about all the things that we have going on. Also, if you want to check out previous episodes of the podcast, you can do that on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. But yeah, for now, I'll hand back over to the guys to get on with the rest of the show. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully everybody has gotten over their analysis paralysis there as they try and work out which side of the fence they fall on and which is more important, whether it's your personal brand or whether it's that of your business. Maybe they have some answers. Maybe they don't. Like Dan, he decided not to.
Let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. So diving back into this conversation then, going back into the client experience side of things, there's a word that comes up often in podcasts now and discussions. And it's two words. And those would be...
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah. It's AI. Where do you see AI playing a role here, if you do at all? I mean, you could just say, no, go back to the dark ages, no more tech.
Now, I've been told off for being grumpy about this before. Not told off, but I've been told I am grumpy about this. Just because I guess, we're all excited about it and all that kind of stuff. And I can see why, because it's going to mean that we don't have to get off our asses and all that kind of stuff, which is great. Or we can sit on our asses more, which is great. But I think I'm a bit skeptical about it, just about what it's producing at the moment and also how people are using it. So, for example, with things like content and stuff like that, I still don't think it's there yet. And certainly not with things like copy and paste and all those kind of things. I think when I see those, I can spot them so easily and I know that it's just a bit off. It doesn't sound like you. And that's personal brand is all about what you sound like and what you're saying. And now we're letting literally a tool say it for us instead. So you think it's going to be really good for your personal brand, especially with things like content, but it's not. What it is going to do really well is things what I've already been talking about with, the things like branding and those kind of things and links between different systems and all those kind of things. So this isn't going to be anything revolutionary. We've talked about it loads in NextGen, but the boring bits that we don't like doing, so the bits that we obviously should be getting computers to do, like all the technical bits and all those kind of things, 100% love that. I am on definitely the side of that. I can't see it being ready anytime soon to replace what you guys do. If you went out now and asked anybody in the street, would you like to talk to a computer about your finances? We haven't even got to a point where they want to talk to humans about finances. And now we're talking about wanting to talk to a thing that doesn't even exist. I don't know, maybe it'd be better. I don't know. But, yes, there are certain AI things out there that have empathy and all those kind of things, but it's just not the same. It's just not. And you guys, I can't imagine when you're talking to clients, I can't imagine that you're ever sat there thinking, would a computer be doing a better job if it was sat in my place right now? I mean, it would. I would say it would certainly do it on a logical level, probably, because it has access to more information than you guys do.
It might power the advice journey, but it won't replace, because we need humans.
100%. And I think that's what AI was ultimately designed for. I don't think somebody was, well, maybe they were. I don't know. You never put it past some of them. But I don't think they were literally sat there thinking, ha, we're going to replace humans with this. I think they were actually trying to improve things and become better. But I think it's just our scared, ultimate animal brains getting scared that something's actually going to replace us with this kind of stuff. But I don't think it will. Certainly not with what you guys do.
It's looking at AI, I think, putting it back into that kind of marketing context. I think there's some really, really interesting points there that you raised that, it is a tool that can be utilized, especially when you can do something much more quickly. And if you've got an event, if you've got, you want to send out something on social media, there's ways in which you can get AI to help you with that. But it's making sure that you maintain that kind of branding side of things. It's making sure that it still sounds like you and you don't just look like everybody else now, because you go on LinkedIn and you can tell, can't you?
And you can now tell, can't you? Because when it was new, really new, I was amazed by it. Yeah. And you'd be like, they're so clever. But now you can tell. You can spot it. You're like, that's AI.
The most famous one is, let's embrace this journey together and build a more empowered future for everybody.
Wait, that's my tagline.
Well, I mean, I was like you when we first saw that, I was like, man, that's a good saying.
Yeah.
But now I'm just a bit like, I see that on every single, there's things like hashtags and all that kind of stuff. People who use emojis who've never used an emoji before, all of a sudden they've got 3 million of them in posts and stuff like that. And but you are right. With things like, these questions that we're asking right now were probably written by ChatGPT, aren't they?
I mean, this is a chat that's very original. But no, it helps though. If you go, I've got some ideas, I want to kind of say this. And obviously, the more specific you are with your prompts, the more that you really look into, this is what I want from it, the more you put in, the more you get out. But it's about working out how to utilize those tools in order to push your business forward and make sure that you are, you can generate a lot more content and you can get out there in front of your clients if that's what you want to do in whatever way you want to do it in different platforms. But I think it opens doors for people, but it's just trying to work out, where do I sit in this, and making sure that I'm not just looking, it's just a homogenous spread of everybody doing the same thing, posting the same thing, like you said, with the different emojis. And I don't think it's, from my side of things, I don't think it's a bad thing, but it's just working out which tools are going to help you and save time, rather than do coming up with the creative side of things, coming up with your voice, because your voice is what people are buying into, and your authenticity. Yeah.
And you mentioned the word prompt there, and I guess prompt has never been used so much now, because that's literally what we're all doing every single day. But the people who are getting really good at prompting are the people who can produce the best things. So like, ChatGPT, you can tell it all sorts of different things to do. One of the most easy things you can do, for example, is when you write it, you can say, please write this in British English rather than American English. So it'll get rid of all those Zs. For example, one of them is like emphasize. The British way, I think, of spelling that is emphasize with an S at the end. The American way is Z. So as soon as you have put that out there into the world, everybody can tell it's been written with ChatGPT, because you haven't replaced the S's, the Z's to be S's. So the better you can prompt, the more context you can give it. It ultimately is still a machine, so it doesn't know every single thing. It doesn't know context yet. So you need to give it as much context as you possibly can. And when you do that, that's when you can really, really, really powerful. But I think just going into ChatGPT and just saying, write me a blog on pensions.
Yeah, of course. I mean it's not going to work. But you think about some businesses, I don't know, like for example, your tailor, it's not huge. You don't have a whole team of people to do lots of different things. You want to make sure that you're spending your time in the most effective way possible and being there for clients. It's then when you look at kind of the marketing side of things, I'm sure it's how do you utilize everything that's on offer to help with that.
Well, and if you're a solo business owner and there's no boardroom where there's all of you discussing what will be in your marketing brochure or your client agreement. So I think AI is really powerful to be able to give you a starting point. So to be able to ask it, tell me what things should be covered in a typical client agreement. And then from that, you then flesh it out and make it you and your brand or your firm brand. Yeah. And if you're a solo business owner like me, you're only talking to yourself. So you're only going to bring the ideas that you've got in your head. So I think it's quite powerful to do that.
Yeah, and it's a really good starting point if you feel like you need to be doing a bit of marketing and you need to be getting some content out there, using ChatGPT just to give you a format to follow sometimes. Because sometimes you ask it a question, it turns out some absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, that was awful, try again. And it might give you a few decent ideas that you can work with. And I know in the past I've used it because I just have verbal diarrhea constantly and I can never make a lot of sense, as you can tell right now. And
so is that another one of our secret words that we have to get into?
But I kind of brain dump and then I'll stick it to ChatGPT and I'll be like, can you just condense this into something a little bit more palatable?
Really good for that.
That's
actually.
Great.
Yeah.
And it's not even just ChatGPT who can do that. It's other tools that are actually specifically designed for that. So they're even better at doing that.
And it does keep a little bit of your voice as well. Yeah. And you just go in and you fine tune it and you've got yourself, but it's a slightly better version of yourself.
So for people with, like you said, or verbal diarrhea or creative block or whatever it is that we want to call it, when you sat down there in front of a Google Doc or a white page of A4 or something like you were last night with questions and stuff like that, for example. Like that can be, like you said, it's a fantastic starting point. But all I would say is prompt better. And if it's saved you so much time, so just invest a little tiny bit of that time that it saved you into making sure that it's your voice and making sure that it actually makes sense and that it's something that you would say.
Yeah. Definitely. And before we're swiftly running out of time, you can chat for
I know, yeah,
for the UK.
I have got verbal diarrhea.
But I want to just mention funky docs and presenting things in an interesting way and the impact that has on a client. And that's where you spend a lot of your time. So I'm sure you probably have some strong opinions on how people should be presenting things.
Yeah, I mean, the one I always talk about is, this is again another point about friction and client experience and those kind of things is when a client first comes into a lot of financial planning businesses, they'll be given something like a privacy notice or a terms of business or something like that. And right from the beginning, that sets the scene of this is going to be something that looks and feels quite boring. When in reality, financial planning is not boring, is it?
No. Not if it's done right.
Yeah,
I think if it's done right. Well, even when I was going to say even when it's done wrong, but it's definitely not boring when it's done wrong. But when it's done, you're exactly right. When it's done right, and when the transformations that you guys help your clients make, and the journeys that you lead them on, and all those kind of things, like that is super duper duper exciting. But then our documents and everything the way that we look and the way we give, and it comes into branding again. But the stuff that we give to our clients is just, sometimes literally they don't even look at it because it's just so dull and boring. And a lot of the time, advisors will actually apologize to their client. I've done this in the past where I apologize to my clients and I say, or to clients and say, I'm sorry I have to give you this, but the regulator has asked me to, and all that kind of stuff. And it might just be a subconscious thing again, but that immediately again puts you on the back foot. Whereas imagine if you were in a position where you could go to a client and you could say, this is everything you need to know in one thing. Have a read of it. Let me know if there's anything that doesn't make sense in there, but here are the really important bits. Record yourself talking through it so they can watch it separately. You don't have to do it every time. You can just do a Loom video of you talking through the terms of business, something like that. That's absolutely fine to do. So right at the very start, you get off to a really, really good start with that kind of stuff. When you get further down the line, that's where we really start to see the funky docs coming in. I thought you said fungi docs as well before, but I was thinking like mushrooms or something.
No, funky docs.
I know you said funky.
Is it my pronunciation? Probably. Or are you just not used to, well-spoken, the Queen's English?
Northern joke there. Thanks very much. So when it comes down to the funky docs, really start to play in is when you get to things like financial plans and we call them annual planning summaries and that kind of stuff. Whereas, again, the amount of firms who actually send clients a financial plan as in something that they can actually take with them, and it says all the important bits in there, and it doesn't really talk about the technical stuff, but it talks about what they actually want to do with their lives. It's not actually that many firms do that. No. And it's not the firm's fault. It's just something that we need to get I think, well, I'm going to say this obviously, but I think we need to get that in there. Because if I was a client now, I haven't got a financial planner, by the way, and I'm not looking for one because anybody's thing. But if I was, then that is what I would be looking for is that kind of stuff. And not necessarily, I know that in financial planning, ultimately the financial planner is the financial plan, really. Mm-hmm. But I think giving clients something which just summarizes everything really nicely, really cleanly, has graphics in there to make it more exciting. The difference that can make to a client's understanding when you're looking at things like consumer duty and all that kind of stuff, but also just, again, creating sticky clients. If you can make them look forward to this kind of stuff every year, they're never, ever going to leave, and they're always going to refer other people onto you.
And like you say, for consumer duty specifically, it's really important that the understanding is there, isn't it? And I always say in my own business that if you can't leave my meeting and tell somebody else what we're going to do and how it works and everything, then I've failed slightly. Mm-hmm. And some clients say, I don't care, you just do it all. It's like, well, no, that's not the deal. I want you to know what's going on and be involved and invested in that. So I think that's really important. Yeah. 100%. Great.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up our episode today. What a nice place to end. And I will say, before we go, it hasn't just been the four of us in this room, has it?
It hasn't.
We've been joined by a very, very special VIP for this episode, who has been the most professional out of everybody, the most well-behaved, and that's Juno the dog.
Juno the dog. Can we have a round of applause for Juno
well
the dog?
Done, Juno. She's been sleeping on the floor like an absolute angel. But yes, that's it for this episode of the NextGen Planners Podcast. Thank you, Dan, for joining us. Not that you have much choice, and thank you, Clara and Taylor, and thank you all for listening. We will see you next time.